The finger pointing over the New York City migrant crisis is at full throttle now. The Biden administration wrote a letter to New York City and Albany saying they didn't handle the influx of more than 100,000 migrants right. Mayor Eric Adams is blaming Governor Kathy Hochul for resisting sending more migrants upstate. And Hochul is blaming the federal government for not doing more to help people get working papers and get productive jobs. Well, a much smaller slice of the migrant crisis has been playing out for years in Plattsburgh, and it's taking its toll on local groups helping those migrants. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day is provided by Renew Architecture and Design, designing camps, custom homes, and more throughout NCPR's listening region. Details at renewarchitecture.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Tuesday, August 29th. First up, state police say they're investigating the murder of an 88-year-old woman in Watertown. Rena Eves was found dead in her apartment on Sunday. According to the Watertown Daily Times, Eves worked as a nurse at Mercy Hospital before retiring. She attended Trinity Episcopal Church, where she also volunteered, though her limited mobility kept her from attending church recently. The church's rector, Reverend Molly Payne Hardin, told the Times Eves greeted churchgoers and wrote cards for members going through big life events. She said Eves was a loving and thoughtful person. Police told the Times the attack wasn't random, and it's not clear when the murder occurred. Anyone with information is asked to contact state police at 315-366-6000. Hundreds of homebound seniors in rural parts of the North Country depend on local Meals on Wheels programs for food. But there's currently a major shortage of volunteer drivers to deliver those meals. Lucy Grindon reports.
According to the director of the Franklin County Office for the Aging, multiple local adult centers in the county are having the same issue: not enough Meals on Wheels drivers. Volunteers are especially scarce in the smallest towns and most rural places, like Brushton, Moira, Fort Covington, and St. Regis Falls.
We're having a hard time attracting people because St. Regis Falls doesn't have that much of a group to attract from.
That's Carol Raymonda. She's the president of the board of the St. Regis Falls Adult Center, which runs the local Meals on Wheels program. The Census Bureau estimates that Franklin County's population has fallen by about 2.5% just since 2020. That means more than 1,000 fewer people living in the county. Raymonda says COVID-19 has also made former volunteers less likely to help out.
They're all in their late 70s, early 80s, and they didn't want to come back because COVID right now is on the rise again.
The St. Regis Falls Meals on Wheels program only has 6 drivers right now, covering a region about 30 miles across. Raymonda says the program needs a minimum of 10 drivers, one for the in-town route and one for the out-of-town route for each weekday. One consequence of the driver shortage is that meals are only being delivered 3 days a week, not 5. And clients might not get to see anyone on the days when they don't get deliveries. Raymonda personally drives the out-of-town route, which serves 8 seniors. She says some of them are pretty isolated.
They don't see anybody else their whole week. And Mondays some days are long because you've got lots of people wanting you to sit and talk for a few minutes. You get to know the people and they want company for a few minutes.
Right now, she's just trying everything she can to attract more volunteers. She says the in-town route is shorter and could probably be done on a lunch break.
We could use more help. Even the people that are working from home, if they can take an hour off for their lunch break and come and deliver it, would be great.
The Adult Center has a van volunteers can borrow, so you can help even if you don't have a car. Drivers are reimbursed for their mileage and also get a free meal. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio.
Since about 2017, thousands of migrants have stopped in Plattsburgh on their way to seek asylum in Canada. And since the unofficial border crossing at Roxham Road was closed earlier this year, many have found themselves back at Plattsburgh's bus station. One not-for-profit has been helping the asylum seekers through it all. As Kara Chapman reports, Plattsburgh Cares has been stretched thin.
Plattsburgh Cares was best known for providing supplies like coats, hats, and stuffed animals to immigrants as they crossed the border at Roxham Road. It also helped asylum seekers with temporary housing, food, translation, and referrals for legal assistance. But when Canada closed Roxham Road at the end of March and started turning refugees back, Plattsburgh Cares got a lot busier. President Kathy Sager estimates the not-for-profit provided financial assistance to about 1,000 people between March 25th and the end of June.
They would wind up somewhere between Champlain and the Plattsburgh bus station. And for those people, they needed help with getting to another place because staying here wasn't going to help them at all.
Sager says Plattsburgh Cares volunteers would get calls 24/7 about people needing emergency supplies and a place to stay the night. And she says they often had to take on people who weren't eligible for county assistance. Over time, Plattsburgh Cares funds started to run out. And Sager says all of this work was taking its toll on the volunteers.
There was just this huge drain, not just on our financial resources, but on our human resources with our volunteers being constantly on call, in a way that were very overwhelming.
So in June, Plattsburgh Cares told its volunteers and benefactors that it was suspending financial support and humanitarian assistance to asylum seekers in the area. They needed time to reorganize their efforts and figure out next steps. Christine Peters is the commissioner of the Clinton County Department of Social Services. That agency administers the state's safety net programs to people who are eligible, which can include non-U.S. citizens known to immigration authorities. Peters says Plattsburgh Cares' decision to suspend aid didn't seem to impact her agency. She thinks other community organizations have stepped in to fill the gaps.
We're not seeing a deluge of individuals coming in, but we are seeing 1 or 2 a night, 4 or 5 a night, a few more over the weekends. So it ebbs and flows, but it's still consistent.
The official numbers show that far fewer people looking for asylum in Canada are coming to Clinton County since the border rules changed. The difference now, though, is many more are getting sent back to the U.S. Most end up back in Plattsburgh at the bus station to plan what to do next. Peters says those immigrants don't tend to stay long, but they need temporary housing and transportation assistance.
The individuals that are coming to this community aren't seeking to relocate here. They are seeking to get into Canada. And if they can't, then they're going back to where they have family, friends, or some sort of cultural context that they feel comfortable with.
Plattsburgh Cares is now focused on helping those people while they're here by plugging some of the gaps in the local social services and nonprofit system. For example, earlier this month, Sager says they dropped off bags of food at 2 area motels where refugees and food-insecure people were staying. But even though the way they operate has changed, Plattsburgh Care's stance on what needs to happen to help asylum seekers hasn't. Sager says government needs to take on a larger role.
They have the resources, they have the facilities, they have the manpower to handle this problem. We would be happy to be consultants because we've done this, but we can't carry on as we have been.
DSS Commissioner Christine Peters says she thinks Clinton County is doing what it can to help the migrants.
The solution is not going to come from us. I think the solution is going to come from a bigger entity. I think federal policies, I think state policies, I think all of the governments that have been involved in creating this need to kind of strategize together. And I'm not sure that's anybody's got that on their radar.
Right now, the state's focused on New York City, which is dealing with thousands of asylum seekers. The state budgeted $1 billion this year to reimburse the city for costs like social services, shelter, and food. Governor Kathy Hochul has also been lobbying the federal government to waive the waiting period for these immigrants to start working and allow the state to use federal property to help house them. Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie recently said the state needs the federal government to intervene.
At some point, we can't just keep pointing fingers at each other. We all just have to figure this out.
Sager says she encourages people to call or send personal letters to their elected officials to let them know they're worried about this issue. She says one of her biggest fears for the asylum seekers is that they'll be taken advantage of or trafficked.
Desperate people will resort to desperate measures to find a place where they can be safe and their family can be safe. So I think that the pressure has to be put on the elected officials. Show up.
Sager says in the meantime, Plattsburgh Cares will continue to advocate for more support from all levels of government and work to educate asylum seekers about what awaits them as they head north. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio, Plattsburgh.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Christopher Watts of Canton and David Archibald of Kingston, Ontario. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.